In today's episode, I caught up with HGG Performance founder Mick Sears, who made the commitment to run his first marathon at the 2023 Gold Coast Marathon back in November 2022, live on his own podcast called Squeeze the Juice when he had me as his guest.
Is there a marathon sort of like mid to first quarter next year? Maybe I might have to throw myself in the deep end and just go the first 42K.
Gold Coast Marathon next year, that'll be early July, so you've got plenty of time to prep for that too.
Early July, put me down.
Yeah.
And you're going to be my coach.
Yeah, awesome.
That's it.
Lock it in. So look, I'll be there.
Done.
Mick wanted to run a marathon for several reasons. The huge personal growth that comes with the journey, to inspire his team at HGG Performance, and to be a real life case study of someone who doesn't like running and isn't a runner, but trains for a marathon for the first time with a coach, integrating HGG products into their training regime. It was a pleasure working with Mick to help him prepare for his first 42K and to see him turn his goal into reality at the Gold Coast Marathon. A quick warning, this episode contains discussions of a death that occurred during the marathon. We would like to pay our respects to this person's family and send them our prayers. Welcome back to the First 42K podcast. Today I have Mick Sears with me, who is a marathon man. He just knocked over the Gold Coast Marathon. Mate, congratulations.
Oh, mate, it feels good. I've got my I've actually got my medal next door, so I was going to wear that today, but I brought it in.
Mate, as you should. I reckon. We should have both just been sitting here with the medal on. I reckon that'd be a good thing. It's a huge achievement. It's obviously something that came about because when you had me on your podcast, the Squeeze the Juice podcast, you mentioned how, this year you really want to challenge yourself with another fitness goal. And you said, I'm just going to run a marathon. What do you reckon? Can you help me? Do you want to help me out? And I said, I would love to. That'd be awesome. And
I actually think it went along the lines of, how long does it take to get someone ready for a marathon? And then you said 6 months and it was November time. And then I was like, no. Let's talk about someone who hates running, who can't actually probably get past 3 kilometers. And you're like, yeah, 6 months, no dramas. And I thought to myself, there's no fucking way he's going to get me to get me to do a marathon in 6 months. And then that's when it started.
Yeah, I reckon, if it was November, we pretty much got started right away. So maybe closer to 9 months. But I just said, you're going to get to work. You're going to get to work. And I did. And obviously every person's different. For some people, it'll take 12 months to run a marathon. For some, it will take 6 months. For some, if they have a half marathon base already, it's going to take them 3 months. Everyone's at a different level. It depends on so many different factors, like their age, their training background, how often they can train, all of these things. You had a strength training background underneath you. And I was like, you've got a strong frame. I'm confident we tweak a few things. We get you doing a few more runs. You will build up the capacity to be able to take this on. So you made the commitment on the potty, and I love that. And we're like, this is what we're doing. And it's been a good, fun journey. So I know I said it before, but congratulations. It's huge. And I made sure that right at the end of your mara, I was there with the Corona for you.
When I seen it coming, I was thinking, I wonder if that's for me or if it's not. Because at that point, I was thinking to myself, the last thing I want to do is scull a beer. But when it hit my lips, it was the best thing that could have ever happened.
No, so good. Well, let's talk about, we will go into more of your training and all that and how you prepared for it. But now we're recording this 2 days post the Mara. How are you feeling? How's the body?
Mentally, I'm feeling quite good. Physically, I'm in the wars a little bit. I can barely go up and down stairs.
Yeah.
To be honest, like it's as it to be expected. Like it's like one of those weird things when you sort of, I almost want the hurt. You know, I'm excited to like be so sore because it's like that level of achievement that I'm like, I wanted this. You know what I mean? Like Katie's like to me the other day, do you want some Panadol? I was like, no fucking way. Don't you dare give me any Panadol when it hurt. But like, like I say, like if I through the race, like, in the lead up, like I felt really good. I think, there was a couple of things that happened through the race, which were a little bit annoying. Like I started getting some blisters in my feet and stuff like that, which didn't actually like do that much to me. Like that didn't really stop me from thinking or doing anything. But it was more like when I got to about 25 to it was about 25, 26 Ks, my quad started to lock up. And then I was like, fuck, this doesn't feel good. And then so like I started trying to like punch through some electrolytes and like eat my jellies and stuff like that. But then like my right side started to go as well. And so like both of those VMOs just started to lock up, and I was like, this is like, 28. And I was thinking, I've still got 14 Ks to go. This is going to hurt, man. And so like, I think like, that back end of the marathon was a real mental and physical challenge, which I sort of, it's not until, you sort of don't, like when you boys talk about, doing marathons, blah, blah, like when I hear like George doing like 30 marathons in 30 days, you's doing like 50 marathons in 50. I just think, so marathons can be done. But it's not until you do them that you realize how fucking hard they are. That back end is hard.
It's hard, bro. It's I remember on the start line, I don't know if you heard this, like obviously everyone on the start line, some people have their earphones in, some are talking to the neighbour next to them.
I was listening to
Robert D. Costella on the mic.
That was mad. I was awesome. So fired up for that.
Yeah. He's an Australian legend, marathon legend. I think he's like a 2:07 marathoner or something.
Is he?
Yeah, or 2:10. He's
no wonder he was talking like that.
He's a pro.
He's a boss.
He's unbelievable. But Deeks was firing everyone up, and he was saying like, just remember though, the marathon starts at the 30K mark.
30K mark. And I had that in my head. I was like at one point there, when the blister started kicking in, because I thought I had something in my shoe, I was like, how the fuck have I got a rock in my shoe? This is annoying. And I just thought I'd keep running with it, and I was like, that rock's getting annoying. And it also feels like it's getting bigger. And I was like, I better pull over and just pull this out, because it's obviously, it might give me a blister. And then nothing came out, and I was like, okay, I keep going. Then it started happening on my right side of my foot, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm getting blisters. And then so that sort of like started the first of like the little mental niggles. I was like, oh God, here we go. And it like once like you get out to that 30, I was like, by the time I got into 30, like I was in some pain. But I had that in my head, like him going like, this is when the marathon starts. And I was like, holy shit, here we go. Like 12 Ks to go.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm in this much pain. I was like, it's gonna be a war for this back half.
Yes, well, yeah, it is. It's like I remember the same thing. I was running with Matty Hanley, one of our other First42K runners, and I was like, come on, mate, try and find a way to smile through this, because you're just grimacing. That from 30K onwards, it was real tough. And I was like, you didn't sign up for the first 30K.
Yeah.
You signed up for the last 12.
Yeah.
So just find a way. And I think that's really important also in like the recovery. And I love how you spoke about that. Like what Katie said, do you want Panadol? You're like, no way. Well, that's important, because this is something that we say to our runners is like, enjoy it, try and find a way to smile through the grimacing, especially when you're walking up and down stairs, because it's a badge of honor. Like you've earned that pain. Yeah. Like honestly, just lay there and think, nah, this is so good.
Yeah. It was even funny. Like I was saying, I went to the pavilion after it, and I had my medal on under my shirt, and it was funny, as I was walking through the door, like I was limping my way there, and the guy at the front, like the security guard at the front, he was like questioning these two guys at the front, like they were sort of like well dressed. I was like, oh, these guys are going to be assholes today, like not letting anyone in. And he sort of like looked through these two dudes and looked at me, and he sort of like looked me up and down, and he was just sort of like, give me like the nod, like, come on in, mate. He looked like it was just like I know what you just done. Come on in.
It's like, mate, you look like you need a beer.
Yeah, literally. And so these other guys just sort of like looked as if like, what do you mean? We're dressed up real nice, and he's going in with a t-shirt, like, and it just was one of those like acknowledgement looks, like, I see you. Come on in.
So good. So good. I wish you could just look at those other two blokes and be like, do you know what I just did? I've just joined the 1% of the world population, baby.
Yeah, and it is funny. Like I say, like, out that back, like it was the first time that I really, like someone died. You know what I mean? Like, and Katie in that scene, that got like Katie and that were watching the person that they were seeing, and even like there was a couple of people, and it wasn't until like that sort of like that back that back 12, like there would have been someone down with that's something that I didn't really get and didn't know that really happened. That like that back end is a war zone. You know what I mean? Like people, I reckon in that back 10, there would have been someone down every 500 meters with paramedics. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, I can see why it can be like, you know, maybe with the wrong preparation.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, it's not me looking at that going, oh, this is really hard. But I was looking at these people going, were you prepared?
Yeah.
Or like, you know, did you understand what you were getting into? Or, you know, because even for me, like training as hard as what we did, even I was like shocked at that back end.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We don't know how these people have prepared. And, you know, sometimes it's just bad luck as well. Anything can happen in any of these things. And that's why I think it is such a phenomenal achievement to run a marathon, because at any time, anything like this, whilst it is rare, it can happen. And you're acknowledging that as well. It's almost like me with Cairns to Melbourne last year and the run around Australia next year. You're putting yourself in a risky position, but you're doing what you love. And so like my heart goes out to that person and their family. And I just hope that, you know, he absolutely loved running, and that was his way to go, because it is incredibly sad. And coming in, that was when Maddie and I were running in. Like with the paramedics are like, stay to the left. They had to get the ambo right up to this guy. And yeah, it was.
Well, that's where Katie and that were. They were standing right there and they were watching like it all go down. And it's like, it is like, it's and that's, as I say, it's like, it's sort of, that's what even Mum and Katie both said. They were like, they realised the gravity of like what can happen and like how big achievement, say a marathon is, and like what the body goes through. Yeah, so it's
huge, and that's why like we always try. I think people like Jordan, myself, we never want to undermine the marathon just because we're out there running 200 miles. It's phenomenal. It is pushing the body, you know, to the absolute extreme, and we need to also understand if you're running a marathon, you're not running. You know, you're running at a harder pace, a higher intensity than you are when you're doing 100 miles or 200 miles, these sorts of things. So, yes, it might be a little bit less time. It might be, depending on the pace you run, 3:30, 4, 5 hours, whatever it is, but and not 24 hours, but the intensity is a lot higher. And that's why these sorts of things can happen. So, yeah, it's something that I think consistency, I know our listeners, sometimes I get messages from people like, oh, just shut up about the inconsistency and the importance of being consistent, because I say it in every single episode. But like I had someone around the 20K mark ask me if I have any spare gels because he was cramping up. And I was just thinking, have you done the work? Like, you know, maybe you've gone in with no nutrition. And if that's the case, you're in a bit of trouble here. But have you done the work?
What do you think that I cramped up? I'm like, do you think that there was like factors that you think that may have contributed to what, or like, do you think that, you know, like what I did was right or wrong?
Definitely. I think that's, I mean, well, I cramped in my first marathon, 38K mark, a horrible quad cramp in my left quad where there was an angel, a mother and her 2 children handing out Zupadoopers, and that saved me in my very first marathon.
I was nearly eating kids' hands the way that they were giving out. They were giving out fucking lollies, and I was nearly stopping with them. And
yeah, so definitely, I mean, nutrition plays a massive role, and obviously we work together on that side of things as well. Going into it, it was like, I want you to try all sorts of gels. I want you to get, you know, your hands on some Morton and some Spring Energy and all these different gels, and try and find what works for your gut, because
it never actually happened. Like that's the first time, like out of all the runs in the whole 6 months, that I actually got cramp. I've never got cramp, and I've never usually a cramp. Like it never really happens, but that's why it was like.
Everyone, whether you're trying to or not, obviously we had a bit of a plan with race day, but also in saying that you naturally run faster on race day. You get caught up in the atmosphere, and if you're pushing your body a little bit harder than it's used to, then it's, you know, you're more susceptible to cramp. It's definitely a lot more possible. You have to really get your electrolytes right, which is hard out there as well. You know, maybe you've trained with different electrolytes in carrying your flasks on your long run, and then you don't want to carry all that on the marathon. So then you're relying on fixed nutrition, which was on the side of the road.
Yeah, I grabbed. I only used one of them when I started to really hurt. Katie gave me some, like I got her. She was my pit crew on the way, so like I got her. I got my electrolytes. I was carrying some, but then she give me like my bottle as I was going through Burleigh. So that's what I mean. Like I felt like, you know, it was like I say, who knows? It could have been when we were hammering up through Burleigh. That might have been the issue. Who knows? It's like it's thieved me. It's thieved me of something that I might have to come back for.
Yeah, awesome. I love to hear it. That was going to be one of my questions. Are you doing another one?
I don't know. Like I really don't know. Like the cramping has annoyed me enough that it might have to do another one.
Yeah.
Like I'll definitely do like I remember like a mate of mine literally the day of after I'd finished the marathon was driving home, and he called me just to ask me how everything was and rah, rah. And he goes, I really want to do one. Would you do one? And I was like, no fucking way. I'm never doing another one of these in my life.
Yeah.
And then he was like, well, there's a half coming up in Sunny Coast apparently in like 2 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do a half. And then like now that it's a couple of days past, I was like, well, I don't want to not train.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I could be convinced.
This happens a lot. It's like some coaches talk to their athletes about don't sign up within a week to a new event because you're riding that high, that feeling of euphoria on the other side. But also, I think immediately after, like that does not surprise me in the slightest that was your response to one of your mates. Because I remember in April when I did...
Well, I did announce my retirement to you after the race.
Immediately after, we get a photo, we're having a chat, you're like, never doing it again. For sure. But yeah, even the same, like even me now, 6 years of heavily invested in running, 6 years into my running career. When I did the Coburg 24-hour run earlier this year, one of my best mates, Sammy, was texting me at the end of the run saying like, congratulations, mate. How was it? How was the experience? I'm proud of you. And I sent back, that wasn't that fun. And I don't even remember that. And it wasn't until a few days later when I'm thinking, how good was that? 24 hour, let's do another one. Because you forget about the hard times. You just remember how good it feels at the end. And then I check my text to Sammy and I'm laughing. I'm like, look at this. Less than an hour after the race. That just wasn't that fun. So, yeah. Mate, let's talk a little bit more about your training leading into it. And I want to talk about HGG Performance here as well, because what you do, what your business does is obviously create products to help runners and obviously athletes outside of running as well. But you would have used some of your own products leading into the run and then also stayed, I guess, stuck to the process in what I was recommending with strength and conditioning as well as running as well. How did you find that experience in perhaps stepping away from some of your normal training of what you do on the day-to-day to then go to more of the strength and conditioning running specific?
Yeah, like I hadn't... so like a lot of the unique pieces that we have is like, you know, some people, like some of your listeners might already have some of them, like the Tib bars, the Nordic bars, like that are sort of more specific for, you know, ankles and knees and hamstrings. One thing that I wanted to do was when, like, I was still just doing lower body training, but upper body training, but just more of like a CrossFit-y, like HIIT style of training that I was doing, rather than like, but like going across to your program, that it was obviously, you know, a lot more lower body focused, core focused, and a lot of running, which I wasn't doing at all. You know, before we'd started, I think the furthest I'd been able, like, well, I hadn't done any running since probably playing football, like maybe 10 years ago, where we'd go road runs and stuff like that. But even then, it was bugger all, and it wasn't specific. And I hate running, and I'd still dislike it to a point. But I actually quite like I enjoy the process of it now. That I'm like, because when we first started, it was funny because when we got into it, like we went to the park, you filmed my running style, showed me like everything I was doing wrong, which was most things, and then just adjusted, you know, running technique, you know, the way in which I, you know, like how I stand, where my feet were standing, not overstriding, all of these techniques, which then made running a little bit more enjoyable. So you're not like lugging along, you're actually running properly. And that was something I'd never done before, which was interesting. And then coupling that with the right strength training and in strengthening the right areas on top of actually running, the whole process of it actually got me a lot more interested in my training. You know, in the past it was just, you know, very I've done the same sort of stuff for a long time, so that's why, you know, I was looking for something. So that was one thing that I really found interesting, was the weights and training side of things was really good, but I actually got to experience my own tools in a different manner. Yeah. So like a lot of like my tib bars and the Nordic bars, hamstring strengthening stuff, like I got to feel the body I was in a different way. And it was really interesting, and that's again, like I say, one of the interesting things about following a program that has our equipment in it that was completely foreign to me, was like how that actually impacts the body. And that was something that, you know, for you guys, you know, for people like yourself and George and, you know, a lot of the runners that we do stuff with, you know, they you know, you guys always talk about our products in a certain way, but I've never experienced that in that way. You know what I mean? Because I've never been a runner. So I'm like, yeah, they work as runners, you know, does this and does that, but I've never been a runner to then be like, okay, now I can feel what that actually is doing for the body and how that enhances that area. So I guess like, you know, from the whole process of it, you know, I was sort of, like, I think when I first started with you, I was sitting at about 90 kgs. You know, it was pretty solid. I think if I was to weigh myself today, I reckon I'd be sitting at maybe 80, 81. Yeah. So like within the 6 month period, so from like January time to now, I would have at least cut down 10 to 11 kilos. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. In that process. And I reckon I'm, not just endurance wise, but short wise, like I reckon I'm the fastest that I've ever been. Yeah. You know, from like a sprint point of view, like now that I'm doing like the sprint work, like I was like, when I was doing sprints the other day, like I was thinking to myself, fucking hell, I feel fast. Yeah. You know, I haven't like lengthened out like that since I was playing footy. And even when I was playing footy, like I was like, I'd like to actually go to the track I'd like to go to the park and then do some timing and see like where I was in comparison to like now in comparison to there, because again, like I feel so much faster short distance now. You would be just that power. Yeah, the strength that you've built, the base that you've built through all these runs, but also just refining that technique. It's something where, like, I think back to footy as, you know, Aussie rules, and I haven't played footy properly since my last year of footy was 2017. And I joke about this all the time, but it's also true. I used to get run down holding the ball all the fucking time. I'm just slow out there. I was like, I had to have a very quick handball to get rid of the thing because I was going to get run down. But I had endurance to be able to run out a game really well. I didn't have the foundation of how to run properly. I didn't have the fundamentals. And right now I'm obviously a strong runner, but I'm a terrible swimmer. And one day in the future, I have big goals and dreams in the Ironman space as well. I'd love to do that side of things. Swimming is something... Maybe I can teach you how to swim, mate. Yeah, swimming... We'll swap roles for a bit. Swimming is something I want to chip away at for sure. I mean, right now it's only a little focus because obviously running's the main one and strength work in prep for the run around Australia. But at the same time, one of our runners back home who's actually helped me with a bit of swimming technique as well, Mel, she said to me, like, don't go out and swim a kilometre. Don't go swim a kilometre and a half, because you try and do those long distances, your form just goes. You don't need to do that right now. Go and do the drills that I tell you to do so you can work on your form. And that's where it all starts. You know, we didn't start you on go out and do a 30K run. It was no, focus on this drill, then this drill, then this drill. And, you know, when we started around that November time, it was around 3 runs a week. And then we slowly lifted it 4 and then towards the end even 5. So it really does depend. When you're coaching someone in a tailored capacity, obviously it depends on their lifestyle, like how busy are they with work, family, all of these things. And maybe you couldn't get out for 2-3 hours at the one time during the week, because during the week you're under the pump. So it was, okay, maybe instead of doing 3 or 4 runs a week, let's do 5 and make them a little bit shorter. And I think that was something that, you know, I thank you so much for, like the way that you tailored my programming due to my lifestyle, because I know that it probably hasn't been the easiest thing to be able to sort of juggle, because like for me, you know, the deeper we got into the program, the more I felt like a semi-professional athlete with the amount of training I was doing, which was good. But it was also like just the workload, trying to juggle business, family, as well as like the training. It was like one thing I had to be really specific with was like where I'm actually putting my time, which was a good thing as well, because like in the past, like, you know, I was training in the afternoons, you know, from say like a 2 to 3 sort of thing, like, or I would just do a bit of training in the morning. It was really sort of sporadic, whereas with this programming, I had to be really specific, because if I was missing certain training blocks or I was missing days, it would really affect everything. So I had to be really specific with everything I was doing. Otherwise, it just made everything harder. You know, I felt like, you know, I barely touched any alcohol through the whole of this year, you know, which, not that I drink a lot, but anytime I would drink, I would feel like, oh shit, because the next day might have to be fartlek or something like that, or the next day might be a long, like, I'd be like, oh, well, I can't have a drink tonight because I got hills. And you're like, people I'd be with be like, what do you mean? I was like, I got to do hill sprints tomorrow. And they're like, so you can't have a wine? No, I'm not having a wine. Yeah. And they'd be like, or like you go out on a Saturday and you'd be like, no, I'm not drinking. Why? Well, I got to do 30 Ks tomorrow. And they're like, what the fuck? Who are you? You know? So I think that was like a really, you know, for me, that the programming that was set it really got me laser focused into the goal. And I think that, as I said to me and Katie sort of sat down last night at the dinner table and we both said that. I was like, I think this is the first time that I've really zeroed into something like this, and you know, I've had to have worked so hard to get to this point. And I think that was like, even today when I got an email with like the photos that came through, and there's a photo when I crossed the line and I'm just like looking up with my hands clenched, just like,
I've done this.
Just a relief of that. And I remember running through and like coming down that, like, to finish. It sort of caught me off guard and it was a bit tough, but you know when you ran through and then it looked like the finish line, but then you run around the corner and it says 250 to go. I come flying around that corner. I was like, we're done here, baby. Let's go. And I come flying around the corner and I was like, I haven't seen Mum or Katie yet. And I was like, I thought there'd be more people here, to be honest. And then as I come around the corner, I look up and I was like, 250 to go? Fuck. And I was already in full sprint. And I was like, I can't stop now, just give it everything. And so like I just ripped, and then I seen them up to sort of there, and so that last like 250 felt like 500 meters, but like it was just that finish off feeling that, you know, all of this like build up of the training blocks and the long run, the months and months of like everything, just sort of coming to that fruition. Like it was nice. And like I say, when we were doing that podcast and you were talking about like people going through, like the reason that we signed up for the fucking marathon was because you were talking about like, oh, when people finish, and I do get it now, you know what I mean? Like I really do get like that feeling of like that achievement of, you know, a lot of people, like, you know, people have said to me, you know, P3 yesterday, oh, like, how'd you go on the marathon? Because everyone was basically at P3 yesterday. They wasn't doing the marathon. Yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did this, blah, blah. But everyone said, yeah, but you finished it. And it's like, that's the cool thing. It's like everyone sort of acknowledges the fact that you finish a marathon, rather than sort of like what's the end, like what's the times and all that sort of stuff. Because I guess like that is a big part of it. But you know, of course, it's the finishing or the doing of that people respect.
It's completing it. Yeah, it's so true. I think because the time commitment has to be there for a marathon. You know, it's like it's why a lot of people do sort of hang around that 10K, 21K mark, because you still have to train. You still have to train hard, but you don't have to put in as much time. If you're doing a marathon, you have to get out for 2 hours, 2.5 hour, 3 hour long runs. You have to slowly get your body conditioned to what you're going to be able to do out there. Otherwise, it's going to be such a big jump in load that the risk of injury is just through the roof, and you're also going to hate it. You're going to be like, I'm never doing this again. So it's a different experience, and yeah, you put in the work and you reap the rewards, which is unreal. Off air a little bit earlier before we started, you were telling me about you finished the marathon completely cooked and you were just so hungry that night you woke up at 1 a.m. Tell me a bit more about that.
When we finished the marathon, I was like, all right, cool. Like I got home and it was like probably lunchtime by the time we got home, and I still hadn't eaten any breakfast or anything. Oh, like I'd had breakfast before I went. I had I think I had a banana, and I had 2 pieces of toast with peanut butter and honey on them. And so that was and a black coffee. That was my breakfast. Tell me if I should have eaten more.
That's a good brekkie. That's what I had. Two pieces of toast with honey and banana and a coffee. So there you go.
Thanks, coach. Didn't even know. But so I had that, and then so when I got home, like Katie cooked me some bacon and eggs on a piece of toast. Had that. My body was just like, oh God, that's good. And then I ended up going to the pub for some beers, which were delicious. Got home, had some. She made like a carbonara with garlic bread. I destroyed that. Went to bed, crashed out hard, and then I woke up. I was so sore when I was lying in bed. Like I just couldn't get comfy. Yeah. So I woke up a couple of times, and then at one stage there, about 1:30, I woke up just starving, and I was thinking, fuck, I've got to get out of bed, and my legs were hurting so much, and I was thinking, wonder what, geez, I hope there's some stuff in the house. And all that was like there, like we'd been to the markets, but it was just like groceries. It was just like fruits, but I was like, I don't want to cook anything.
Nah, the last thing you crave is fruit.
And I was like, it's 1 o'clock. I was like, what's open? I was like, Mickey D's. And so I just hopped in the car, 1:30, went to Macca's, got myself a large quarter-pounder meal, 6 nuggets, and sat in the car park and just destroyed it. And I feel like it was one of the best McDonald's I've ever had in my life.
But that was going to be my question then, was it the best Macca's you've ever had?
It was up there. The chips were fresh. It was like they knew I was coming. It was so good. Everything was just hot and fresh. Like I was like, oh, I haven't had Macca's in so long, and this is the gold. So I think like I said, I think I burnt like 4,200 calories in the run, which is obviously quite a bit. I'd probably like at the end of it, like going out for beers after it and not having anything at lunch, like probably wasn't the best idea, but I had to do it.
You got to celebrate.
Yeah, I had to celebrate. But yeah, the last couple of days, I've been pumping food.
Craving food, yeah.
Pumping food.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because like obviously only a couple of weeks ago now was the BBRT 200 miler, and my watch estimated 26,000 calories burnt.
That's unbelievable.
And I didn't get them back in the last couple of weeks. Like I feel skinny. I don't feel weak, but I feel skinny, and I feel like I need to put on more size again. I need to eat more, and it's such a big important part of running, whether it's running a marathon or running an ultra marathon, is nutrition. So continue to get that food in over this next week because it's a big part. I think a lot of people. One thing that a lot of coaches do is prepare their athlete for the race. So whether it's 10K, half, marathon, whatever the race may be, but we need to really coach our athletes after the race as well, coach them out of it. So understand, okay, this week, really be smart with your recovery. If you want to go for a short recovery run, an active recovery, do it. But if you just want to fully rest and have the week off running, do it. Just focus on your nutrition and really just have that time to chill out and reflect on what you've just achieved.
It's funny you say that because your daily workouts thing just hit me down there. But I physically don't think I can run for the next couple of days. Yeah. I was even just trying to show Mitch downstairs before, like the shuffle I was having to do while I was cramped up, and my quads are just like it's basically like just my quads. Like everything else is fine. Like I don't feel like my calves are fine, my tibs are fine, my ankles, feet, everything feels fine. It's just the quads that are really stinging. just from having to run through that, like those cramps, because like they were cramped up, and I was thinking to myself, you're not going to stop me from, like, I'll crawl over this fucking line if I have to. I've worked too hard this year.
Good.
And I was thinking to myself, because there was people going down with cramp all over the place. They were sitting on the ground. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I can feel you, brother, but that's not going to stop me. I'm like, cramps aren't going to stop me from doing this.
Yeah.
And then just running through them, I think that's the reason that I'm probably just sore, just because they were just locked up, and I was like, I found like a good position where I could just keep shuffling along with them being in cramped. So yeah,
for sure. But I think especially as a first time marathoner, like you really should have that week off. Yeah. You don't need to be doing an active recovery run so much. I probably sometimes think, just because that's where I'm at. Like today, 2 days later, I went for a 30-minute easy run this morning, but this has been the last 6 years of my life. Yeah. So, and that could come if you wanted to stick at it for that long going forward. But I think the message, I'm trying to share here for anyone who has done a marathon or a really hard thing, even if it's a half, is give yourself that time. Be smart on the way out, because we see people peak for an event, they get that euphoric feeling. They're like, I'm on top of the moon. All right, I'm going to give it 5 days and I'm going to do a speed session. I just want that feeling of running hard again. And then we see an injury happen. So we've got to be smart.
How long on the back of it, like, is, say, like the recovery and like the build up period? So say now I'm pretty sore, no doubt. And like in 2 months' time, there's, like I say, a friend of mine wants to do a half marathon. How long do you really, for like people that are in my boat, like, they're just going through their first marathons and they're just in that first training blocks and, coming out the back of it. I felt there was a few times going through the race that I felt like there was certain joints in my knees and stuff like that. There was pressure on them, and I was like, fuck, like I hope, like I was getting some pain in like my patella, and I was like, oh geez, I hope I don't so like I don't want to go back into it too quickly, but also like I don't want to take too much time off at the same time. You don't want to play too much, So like, is that too quickly to be going into something, or is it like, do you take a week off or like a week and a half off and just take it really steady? Yeah, take it steady. Well, today, July 4th, the sunny coast is, I think, the 13th of August. So not even 2 months away. It's about 6 weeks. So it's pretty soon. I think if you do want to do that half marathon, you really have to think about how you go about it. Because if you're going to race that half marathon, that's a lot. Especially, I've got the friend I'm doing it with, he's never done a half. Yeah, okay. I think the furthest he told me yesterday he's pushed out to is about 8. But he, like in Toowoomba, it's pretty hilly. So like it'll be I don't know how hilly. It's still a big jump, but but that's what I'm saying. It won't be like, it won't be fast. Like if I'm going with him, like I'll probably do it most with him, and then I'll like, depending on how he's going, like I'll probably drop the hammer a bit at the end. If I'm feeling good enough, I'll probably like go with him for a while, and then if he's going to drop off, like, to the back end of it, then I'll probably, release the brakes a bit and actually have a bit of a run out at the end, rather than trying to like push the whole thing out myself. Yeah, for sure. So I want to take sort of more of a support run than... Definitely. Well, then you could do that. Yeah. For sure. You could definitely do that. I think this week, as we said, really just focus on recovery. You don't have to run. And then next week, if you wanted to, slowly getting back into it, like even 2 runs. 2 would be plenty. Get out for half an hour and make your long run on the weekend 45 minutes. It doesn't have to be much. Yeah. It's just slowly recovering. But with any program, so right now you've just done your event, you're in a real recovery period, and that's sort of like a deload. So big drop, you have to recover. No one can be on every single week of the year. It's impossible. You can't be just going for it every single week of the year if you want to do races. If your goal is just to run, like we had our last guest on the podcast, Matt Daniels, and he did 535 half marathons in 535 days a few years ago. Now, in that case, right, he's conditioned his body to do it every single day. It's not fast. He's just, that's what he's doing. So he can do it every single day.
But if you're trying to do events and you're trying to peak for the event, you're trying to race the event, you can't be on every single week. Like I can't race Coburg 24-hour run and then try and run another 100 Ks the next week. It's just my body won't allow that. So therefore we need to think, okay, we're going to build for an event with deloads within that program. So that's why you see a marathon build is typically 12 to 14 weeks out. You know, Melbourne Marathon will start getting advertised very hard for people because we're 15 weeks away now. This is the time for people to be focusing on, if they want to run a marathon properly or a 21, then say that they're at a 10K position right now, it's going to take 12 to 14 weeks to get to 21K. If they're going from 10 to 21, if they're at 21, it's going to take 12 to 14 weeks to get to a marathon. So you've got to respect that distance and really give it that time. In your case, because you are just helping a friend, cruising along, you could absolutely do that. I think that'd be a good thing for you to do. It will really make you hopefully even love running more because it doesn't have to be
getting better.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be about breaking the body every time. And obviously, you know, your first mara is an extraordinary achievement, but this is something I talk about a lot. It's like I'm a massive believer in best I can be. I've got best I can be tattooed on my forearm. It was my first tattoo, and it means a lot to me is show up as your best self. And don't give anything less than that. But that doesn't mean racing as hard as I can every single race. Sometimes best I can be is running with one of our runners like I did on the weekend with Matty. You know, making sure that he achieves his goal of finishing his first marathon and running with him. Because 2 weeks ago was BVRT 200 miles. It wouldn't be wise for me to go and flog myself as hard as I can. That wouldn't be the best that I can be. Best I can be right now is helping him. So I think if you're going with that approach, then it's you run light, you run happy, you can really change it up. You can choose your 2 to 3 A races per year. These are the 2 to 3 events I really want to focus on and have a hard crack at it. And that's awesome. And then you can have, you know, a few events around that where you're just having a good time and just rolling the legs.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, well, and like I say, off the back of this, for me, is like getting stuck back into some triathlons and stuff like that as well. They're the things that are really, you know, I'm looking forward to. Like, out of all the 3 legs, running has always been the one I've hated the most. But now it's like the thing that I feel like builds my confidence now.
Yeah.
In being able to, like, I want to continue to have that strong running base now, or like to a certain extent, to be able to then, you know, capitalize on, you know, the fact that I am quite a good swimmer, you know, and the bike, you know, bike's a bike.
So do you have aspirations to do an Ironman one day?
Oh, see, I don't want to do another marathon, let alone at the end of at the end of a swim and a run. Halves, I'll definitely do. I'm definitely keen for a half Ironman. Yeah, definitely.
But you do that, and then you'll think about the Ironman.
See, I get talked into things too easily. Sean.
No, but it's a good thing. It's like it's just breaking it down. You know, you do that mara, then your first ultra.
Yeah, here we go. Now, so I'm going up to an ultra now. This is the next thing. No,
look, it doesn't have to be. But in my case,
Matty Hanley signed up for the ultra day, didn't he? He's on the back.
He's on the Bali Hope Ultra. It's everyone's progression after a marathon is different, but that's why we are so big on encouraging people to train for it. Like, actually do the work, but also do the work right. You know, follow these key principles, because every runner has different circumstances. Every person's got different circumstances, how much they can commit to their training and these sorts of things. But at the same time, you need to get out for a long run once a week. You need to do some strength training. Even if it's bodyweight strength training, get some strength training in. You need to do some easy runs and ideally 1 speed session per week. So look, there's key principles that will help you get there, and then you can apply that to, okay, let's go for another marathon and let's make it faster, or now let's lift to an ultra, or now let's take some time away. But I think when people don't train, that's when they don't prepare properly for these events, that's when they never run a marathon again. And they hate it. And it's an experience where they're like, okay, bucket list item, tick. And look, for some people, that's all it will be. I just wanted to do that once. Awesome. I didn't really hate it. It's just, I'm satisfied, and that's totally fine. But you want to get to the point where you're like, I've done this and I prepared really well, and you didn't hate it so much that you never want to do it again.
You talking me into it again? All right, I'll do another one. That's what you want. But honestly, like the thing that I've enjoyed is the training. You know, the process of it. I've never enjoyed, like, before I'd started training with you, I'd never enjoyed running because running was running. Whereas I feel with the First 42 training program, it's so much more than running. And I think that's the thing that really has got me more hooked into running is the aspects of not just running, you know, and not just the weight training, like the aspects of different type of running, different zone training. You know, I think that zone training has been something that I've been quite interested in, you know, now that I've got like, you know, the devices that now tell me what's going on, which is I find quite interesting, you know, is like when you're meant to be doing certain runs, but you're sitting in a different zone, or, you know, oh, how did I go in this run? I was meant to be taking it slower, but I was actually going faster. Or maybe at this run I should actually wind it back a little bit, and that will help me in this. Or, oh, maybe I've been going too hard in that time or going too slow in that time. You know, doing those fartleks as much as they crucify you. They're, you know, those actually build that mental fatigue, you know, that mental resilience, like that I really enjoy the process of as well, you know. So like there's just so much more to like what you guys are doing with the programming that is just, you know, go out and run. That's why I've sort of encouraged a lot of people I know that have asked me about, like, you know, your programming and what they should be doing in prep. So many people now that I've started running have come to me with as if I'm the coach. They're like, what should you do? And I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. I think it works. Yeah. You know, it's working for me. Yeah. You know, that's why I wanted to use it myself as a case study to see like how my equipment could then reflect back on the consumer as well.
Definitely. Well, I think the ISO tib is one that I've used a lot of. The Nordic bar a little bit less, but the ISO tib heaps of. And we know that shin splints is obviously a big issue for a lot of runners, which really shin splints can occur for a number of reasons. It can be that you jump in low too quickly. It can be that you have too big of an overstriding pattern with your run, so running technique. But yeah, it's also a lack of strength. And so if you can get your hands on an ISO tib or a tib bar, those sorts of equipment to really strengthen those key areas. Like I know for myself, I've never really had shin splints. I never had severe shin pain. If anything, for me, when I was an overstrider, it would show up in my hip flexors. But for some people, that shows up in their shins. Others, it's runner's knee. Others, it's ITB syndrome. Everyone's different. But we do know that shin splints are a big issue, and that's why you've changed the game with these sort of products.
Yeah, and like I say, feeling my own equipment for an endurance athlete made me feel so good. You know, like as I come out of that race today, on the weekend, like there was no pain in that sort of, like through the whole process, like I sort of pulled it away a little bit for a couple of weeks, and I could sort of notice the difference, you know, like I did notice, like I tried to like sort of like some things I'd pull out to see how they would go, and then I'd bring them back in, you know, like I did notice that like glute training that I hadn't done as much of prior to starting with you guys, I noticed I was so weak, you know, and now doing it, like I noticed how effective that training is for a runner, you know, and for maybe a lot of runners don't realize it, and then they end up with crook backs. Yeah. You know, it's probably not the fact that you've got a bad back. It's probably the fact that you've got weak glutes and hammies.
And weak core.
Yeah.
Mate, so many runners hate core work. I hate core work. And it's something that I'm still always trying to get better at, but it's a grind. Like core work is so key. Glute work is so key. We want to be able to use our glutes. They are the powerhouse for running. But if we're not strong there or we're unstable there, we're going to have issues show up. And sometimes, you know, these issues of having a weak core or weak hips can show up downstream. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to experience pain in that particular area. You know, maybe that through a lack of strength up there, you start to get injuries and niggles in the lower leg, or lower leg issues and lack of strength can result higher up the body too.
Well, I also think you get exposed in the endurance side of things as well. Like if you've got weakness in the chain anywhere, you're exposed.
Definitely.
Because you can't get away from it, because you it's not like you're doing a quick bench press or some form of lift that you can get away with it. When you're on these long runs or you're doing speed work or you're doing hill sprints, you get exposed to where your weaknesses are.
It's that repetitive motion.
Yeah, so easily. Like, you can be cruising along and then next minute you're like in the middle of a run and then you start going through like Burleigh National Park, for instance, like not even that big of a rise or going through anything, but you can notice that like you may not have that power to actually push through, or like you can feel like weakness, and and there's certain area, or you just like you run along and then next minute your back's fatiguing or your glutes are fatiguing or your knees are hurting. It doesn't take much. It's just that repetitiveness of it. If you're not following the programming, you just get exposed.
Good to have that awareness as well. Like, I think for the last 6 years as a runner, have done a lot of the main key lifts. I've done my back squats, I've done leg extensions, I've done trap bar deadlifts, single leg work, these sorts of things. I haven't done any iso tib work until about a year ago. And, I remember, I think I said to you on the Cairns to Melbourne run, especially towards the end, because you're not getting stronger out there. Like, you are able to do it every single day. You've conditioned your body to a point, but I'm not strength training. So what was happening is I felt a little bit less stable with every day, especially probably as I was getting skinnier as well. And so I rolled my ankle 3 times on that run, and I knew that, and it was my left ankle, and it kept happening. And I was like, well, this is something I need to work on. So just being able to do that, have that awareness, was a big thing. And then obviously focusing on even BVRT being a trail run. I have to be strong in the ankles or I'm going to fall over and this isn't going to work.
Yeah. Well, that's like again, like I say, for me, that was something that I felt like could be exposed, or like once I started to use like my own equipment in those aspects, it was like, oh, cool. This is really interesting to know how much better this can be for my customers essentially.
Yeah.
And I think the running world's a perfect one for it. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, there's so many people that, you sort of even judge people like when they're running along and you can see them, they've got like wraps up their legs and that's for shin splints or something like that. And you sort of want to tap them on the shoulder and go, what are you using for that?
Mate, sometimes I just want to be on the Esplanade in Burleigh and just hand out a business card. And like, you need some running
Even the running techers, like after you straightened me up, I was like, now I watch people and like, yeah, you're overstriding.
I'm driving along and I just can't help. But like when I see someone, first instinct is, yes, good on them. They're going out for a run. Second instinct is looking at them like, oh, no.
You've got so much work.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, so around November last year, you were able to run just a few K. We are now, about 8 months past that, 8-9 months, and you've knocked over a marathon. What a journey. Congratulations. It's been unreal. I couldn't be prouder of your efforts because I know as well, like HGG Performance, you're hustling here and you're doing great things with the business, but it's hard to then find the time and commitment for a marathon as well. So really well done through this period. And thanks for being an example for other people that they can get started with running and take on their marathon as well. If people want to find out more about HGG Performance, where can they go?
Yeah, so just follow us on Instagram at HGG Performance. We've also got YouTube, HGG Performance. If you just type in HGG Performance to Google, everything will probably pop up. So, but yeah, that's where we put most of our stuff. And if anyone wants any information or any of our study stuff that we do here, just reach out to us on Instagram and just drop us a DM. We'll get back in touch.
Yeah, unreal. Alrighty, mate. We're going to leave it there. You're a marathoner. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you, Shawnee. Honestly, like your program, you practice what you preach, which I find so inspirational. Like, you're not just a run coach. You're a run coach who is actually doing the shit. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing these BVRT fucking 200 milers, like you're running these marathons with people directly after that. You set such an example for your runners, and the program obviously works because it got me there. But just thank you for everything that you've done for for me along this journey. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
My man.
We hope that you love the podcast, and if you did, please leave a review and share it with others. Did you know that you can train with us at First42K for as little as $9.95 per week? If you're looking to fall in love with running and achieve your first 5K, 10K, half marathon or marathon, unlock your 1-week free trial at first42k.com.au. I'd like to thank our partners at HGG Performance for providing the podcast space. HGG Performance manufactures strength and rehabilitation equipment, which is hugely beneficial for runners looking to improve performance and prevent injury. Use the code First42K for 10% off their products. Until next time, live happy and run strong.